My dad declared in front of 45 guests that I never lifted a finger for the family. I stood in the middle of the Biltmore Forest Country Club's lawn, the July sun warm on my shoulders, when my dad raised his beer bottle in front of 45 guests. He pointed at my brother Oliver, grinning, and said, "Here's to Oliver, the kid who always shows up for us." Then he turned to me, his smile thinning, and added, "This one, she's never lifted a finger." The words landed like a slap I didn't see coming. For 6 years, I had covered their car payments, medical bills, even the roof repair after a storm tore through Asheville. All told, I had spent $63,800 keeping their lives afloat. I didn't argue or cry. I just nodded, grabbed my purse, and walked out, the sound of laughter fading behind me. By the next morning, my phone was lit up with 29 missed calls, 8 from Mom, 5 from Dad, and 16 from Oliver, who hadn't called in months unless he needed something. I sat on my balcony in Charlotte, coffee in hand, wondering why I still felt guilty for leaving. The barbecue was held at the Biltmore Forest Country Club, a spot tucked into the rolling hills just outside Asheville, North Carolina. It's one of those places locals love for its old money feel mixed with mountain casual. Wide lawns sloping down to a pond, wooden pavilions strung with fairy lights, and views of the Blue Ridge Mountains that make you pause even if you've seen them 100 times. That 4th of July in 2025, the picnic tables were covered in red, white, and blue plastic cloths, the kind that flap in the breeze and stick to your arms when it's humid. The air smelled of grilled burgers and hot dogs, with a hint of sunscreen and fresh-cut grass. Kids ran around tossing frisbees, dodging the occasional sparkler lit too early, while adults clustered in groups, paper plates in hand, chatting about the latest craft breweries opening downtown or how the tourist season was booming again. I had driven 3 hours from Charlotte that morning, my little Hyundai Tucson packed with a cooler of sodas and the gift I hoped would go unnoticed in a good way. Charlotte's where I live now, in a one-bedroom apartment on the east side, near the university area. Nothing fancy, just a place with a small balcony overlooking a parking lot and some trees that turn pretty in the fall. I work as an accountant at a mid-sized firm downtown, crunching numbers for small businesses, the kind of job that's steady but leaves me staring at spreadsheets until my eyes blur. It's not glamorous, but it pays the bills and lets me help out when needed. On the drive up Interstate 40, winding through the mountains with the radio on low, I let myself hope this year might be different. Last year's gathering ended with me slipping out early after a silly argument about who was supposed to bring the potato salad. Me, apparently, though no one had asked. This time, I wanted things to feel normal, like the family get-togethers from when we were kids, before money and distance complicated everything. When I arrived, a few cousins waved me over and someone pressed a plastic cup of sweet tea into my hand, strong and icy, the way Southerners make it, with just enough sugar to make your teeth ache. My dad was by the grill, flipping burgers in his faded Asheville tourist baseball cap, laughing at a joke from an uncle. He looked relaxed, his shoulders loose, like the knee pain from his surgery a few years back wasn't bothering him today. Mom was fussing over the dessert table, arranging brownies and fruit salad, her hair pulled back in a ponytail that made her look younger than her 62 years. I slipped the gift, a voucher for a weekend at a cozy cabin in the Blue Ridge Mountains, under their plates. It cost me about $600, booked through a local rental site, figuring they'd enjoy the quiet hikes and fresh air they always talked about, but never made time for. My brother Oliver was already holding court near the pavilion, his baseball cap turned backward, cracking jokes that had everyone chuckling. He's always been the easy one, the charmer who can turn awkward silence into a story. At 34, 2 years older than me, he's still figuring things out, bartending at a spot downtown, then trying his hand at brewing his own beer in the garage at our parents' house. He lives there rent-free, in the old ranch-style home on the west side of Asheville, with its screened porch and backyard that backs up to a wooded lot. It's a comfortable place, built in the 70s, with creaky floors and a kitchen Mom remodeled a decade ago. Oliver brought a gift, too. A custom photo book, thick and glossy, filled with pictures of him and our parents, Fishing trips to Lake Lure, Christmas mornings by the tree, him helping Dad fix the porch swing last summer. I didn't think much of it at first. I was just glad to see everyone smiling. But looking back, I wonder if part of me knew something was off, like how Oliver's gestures always seemed to shine brighter, even if they didn't cost much. He wasn't trying to outdo anyone, I don't think. He just liked being the center, maybe because life hadn't been as straightforward for him as it had for me. Still, it stung a little. That familiar pull of feeling like the reliable one who fades into the background, The evening wore on in that easy way summer gatherings do, with people milling between the food tables and the lawn games. We had just finished the main course, burgers charred just right, coleslaw from a local deli that Mom swore by, and folks were starting on desserts when Oliver stood up. He tapped his spoon against his glass, the ping cutting through the chatter, and flashed that grin of his, the one that always made people lean in. "All right, everyone," he said, pulling a microphone from the pavilion sound system, because places like the country club always have one handy for announcements. His voice boomed a bit too loud at first, then settled as he adjusted. He wasn't rehearsed, or at least it didn't seem like it. Oliver just had a way of speaking from the heart, talking about how much our parents had given us growing up, how Dad taught him to fish and Mom always had a hot meal waiting after his shifts. It was sincere, I think, coming from a place where he felt he owed them for letting him crash at home while he bounced between jobs. The crowd murmured approvals, a few aunts nodding along. He handed over the photo book then, wrapped in simple brown paper, and Mom's eyes welled up as she flipped through it. Pictures of Oliver helping Dad with yard work, the three of them at a Asheville farmer's market picking out peaches last fall, even a shot from Oliver's beer brewing setup in the garage. No sign of me in there, but I brushed it off. Maybe he just picked the ones that fit the theme. People clapped softly. Someone let out a little awe, and for a moment it felt warm, like the family was pulling together. Then Dad stood, his beer still half full, and raised it high. "To Oliver," he said, his voice steady but with that edge he gets when he's emotional. "The kid who always shows up for us." More claps, a cheer from a cousin. He paused, turned toward me where I sat at the end of the table, and his expression shifted. Just a flicker. Maybe regret or frustration from years of leaning on me without saying much. "This one?" he said, nodding my way. "She's never lifted a finger." The words hung there, heavier than the humid air. A kid nearby dropped his hot dog, the bun rolling under the table. Someone coughed into their napkin. The chatter died, replaced by an awkward rustle of chairs and glances. I felt my face heat, a mix of hurt and something sharper, like betrayal from the one person who should know better. Dad wasn't cruel by nature. I think he said it out of habit, favoring the visible efforts over the quiet ones, maybe to make Oliver feel good after his rough patches. But it cut deep. I didn't say a word, didn't stand up or explain the checks I'd written. A part of me wanted to yell, to list it all out, but another part felt tired, resigned. I just picked up my purse, walked past the dessert table with its half-eaten pies, and headed to my car. The clarity hit me then, cold and clear. If I stayed, I'd always remember how no one spoke up, how the silence said more than words. The drive back to Charlotte felt longer than 3 hours, the highway stretching out under a darkening sky. Interstate 40 curved through the mountains, the kind of road where you pass overlooks with pull-offs for tourists to snap photos of the misty peaks. I kept the radio off, just the hum of tires on pavement and my thoughts spinning. Part of me replayed Dad's words, feeling the sting fresh each time, but another part wondered if I was overreacting, if maybe he hadn't meant it as harshly as it sounded. That's how it goes sometimes, hurt mixed with doubt, like I should have stayed and brushed it off for the sake of peace. But then I'd remember the silence from everyone else, and the doubt hardened into something firmer. By the time I got home, it was late. My apartment is on the 3rd floor of a brick building in the No-Da neighborhood, with exposed ducts in the ceiling and a kitchen that's more functional than fancy. White cabinets, a gas stove that clicks when it lights, and a window over the sink looking out at a mural on the next building over. I kicked off my shoes by the door, the wood floors cool underfoot, and sank into the couch, a secondhand find from a local thrift shop. That's when I started listing it all out in my head, the things I'd done without fanfare. 6 years ago, when Dad's construction business slowed down after the economy dipped, they were behind on the car payments for their Subaru Outback. It was a practical car for Asheville's hilly roads, bought new in 2019 for around $32,000. They had financed it over 6 years at about 5% interest, payments coming to $500 a month. I stepped in, setting up auto transfers from my account to cover it, totaling $36,000 by now. It wasn't a gift, exactly. I just didn't want them to lose the car they needed for errands and doctor's visits. Then there were the medical bills. Dad's knee surgery in 2021, after a fall on a job site, left them with co-pays and physical therapy costs not fully covered by insurance. Mom's blood pressure meds added up too, especially when her dosage changed and the generic wasn't enough. All in, I'd wired about $12,000 over the years, $2,000 or so annually, pulling from my savings when my paycheck stretched thin. And the roof repair after that bad storm in 2019. High winds ripped off shingles on their ranch house, water leaking into the attic. The quote from a local contractor was $5,000 for materials and labor, standard for Asheville, where heavy rains are common. I paid it outright, figuring it was better than letting mold set in. Add the utilities I'd chipped in on. Electric, water, internet averaging $150 a month, another $10,800 over 6 years, and it all came to $63,800. Not that I kept a running tally back then. It was just what you do for family, right? But sitting there in the quiet of my living room with the fan whirring overhead, it felt like a weight I'd carried alone. The next morning, around 7, my phone started buzzing on the nightstand. 29 missed calls, 8 from Mom, her number popping up first at 6:15, probably as they realized I hadn't stayed at the club like some folks did in RVs. 5 from Dad, spaced out like he was pacing, and 16 from Oliver. 16 from the brother who texted maybe once a month, usually about borrowing my Netflix login or asking for advice on his latest side hustle. He hadn't called since last winter, when he needed help filing his taxes after a rough year bartending. I made coffee in my French press, the grounds from a local roaster in Charlotte that I like for its nutty flavor, and sat on the balcony. The view isn't much, cars pulling into the lot below, the hum of morning traffic, but it's mine. I let the phone ring a few more times, feeling a twinge of satisfaction mixed with unease, like I was being petty but couldn't stop. When I finally picked up, it was Oliver. "Sophia, where did you go?" We were all worried sick. His voice had that edge, part concern, part annoyance, like I'd inconvenienced him. I sipped my coffee, the mug warm in my hands. "I'm fine back home." There was a pause. Then he jumped in. "Look, the hotel booking for the family hike tomorrow fell through. The card got declined or something." It was a group thing, a short stay at a lodge near Pisgah National Forest, about $300 a night for the rooms, plus $200 for an Airbnb cabin we'd tacked on for overflow guests. $500 total charged to my card because I handled the reservations. I smiled a little, though he couldn't see it. "Yeah, that was my card. I canceled it last night." Silence stretched. Then he sputtered. "Why would you do that? Mom and Dad are flipping out. They can't afford it right now." I leaned back in my chair, watching a neighbor walk their dog below. Dad said I never lifted a finger, so I figured I'd make it match. Another long pause. I could picture Oliver rubbing his forehead, the way he does when things don't go his way. He's not a bad guy. I know he loves our parents. Shows it by being there, fixing little things around the house, making them laugh after a long day. But he's leaned on them too, staying rent-free while chasing dreams that haven't panned out, and maybe that's why Dad props him up, to keep him motivated, or to make up for the stability I found on my own. "The Airbnb too?" he asked finally. "Yep, booked under my name." He stammered about how they couldn't afford alternatives, how the whole weekend was ruined. "Well," I said, keeping my voice even, "you're the one who always shows up. I'm sure you'll figure it out." I hung up before he could argue more. It wasn't pure anger driving me, not exactly. There was relief in it, like finally setting down a heavy load, but also a knot of guilt, wondering if I was punishing them too harshly. For 6 years, I'd paid those car notes without a word, covered the meds so Mom wouldn't worry, fixed the roof so they could stay dry. I never threw it in their faces, never said, "Hey, remember that trip to the mountains you enjoyed? My dime." I just wanted to feel like part of the family, not the ATM in the background. But Oliver's photo book, probably $50 from an online printer, got the toast. The worst part was I wasn't surprised. Oliver had always been the spark, the one who'd drop by with a six-pack from a local brewery and stay up late talking sports with Dad. Me? I was the rock, steady but unexciting, wiring money from my office in Charlotte, a corner cubicle with a view of the parking garage where I balanced ledgers for clients who owned restaurants or shops. They'd call him for company, me for crises. He gave time, I gave cash. Guess which one felt more real to them? Growing up in that Asheville house, it hadn't always been lopsided. Mom used to say, "Sophia's our rock, Oliver's our spark," like we balanced each other. But when I got my CPA certification and moved to Charlotte for the job market, better pay, more opportunities, the dynamic shifted. Oliver was finding his path, living at home, experimenting with jobs that suited Asheville's artsy vibe, like brewing or event planning. They saw his efforts up close, praised his resilience. My contributions? Distant digital transfers that kept the lights on. I'd paid the car note to avoid repossession, a real risk with Dad's income fluctuating. The medical stuff was out of necessity. High deductibles are common here, even with insurance. And the utilities? Just to bridge gaps during slow months. No one asked, but they accepted. And over time, it became expected. That night at the barbecue confirmed what I'd half known. To them, I was the absent one. So when I got home, I opened my laptop on the kitchen table, a simple wood one I'd bought from IKEA, and logged into my bank app. I canceled the auto payments for the car, froze the joint card for utilities, let the latest medical copay sit unpaid. It wasn't spite, or at least not only that, it was honesty. If I was invisible, why pay to stay that way? The guilt lingered, but so did the clarity, pulling me in opposite directions like it does when family ties fray. The day after the barbecue passed in a strange quiet. No more calls, no texts pinging my phone. It was almost relieving, like they'd decided to give me space, but part of me wondered if they even noticed the full weight of what I'd done. By Monday morning, back at my desk in the office, a shared space in uptown Charlotte with fluorescent lights and the constant tap of keyboards, I checked Facebook during my lunch break. Mom had posted a group photo from the event, everyone smiling under the pavilion lights, captioned, "Family is everything, even when some folks don't quite get it." The comments trickled in, a cousin saying, "She just walked out?" That seemed rude. Another adding, "Truth can hurt, I guess." Dad had liked every one of them, his profile picture, him in that baseball cap popping up under each. It twisted something in me, a mix of anger and sadness because I knew Mom wasn't posting out of pure meanness. She probably felt hurt too, like I'd abandoned them mid-celebration, and this was her way of processing, rallying the relatives who only saw the surface. I didn't respond right away. Instead, I finished my sandwich, a turkey on wheat from the deli downstairs, and thought about it. Back home that evening, with the apartment smelling faintly of the lavender candle I lit to unwind, I decided to post my own update. No words, just screenshots. bank statements showing the transfers for the car payments, $36,000 over 6 years, emails confirming the medical copays, $12,000 in total, the invoice for the roof repair, $5,000 paid to a local Asheville roofer, and the utility bills I'd covered, $10,800 wired when their account dipped low. It added up to $63,800, money I'd saved from overtime and skipped trips, like the beach vacation I'd planned but canceled last year to help with Mom's unexpected dental work. I made the post public but didn't tag anyone, just let the numbers sit there. A part of me felt exposed, like I was airing dirty laundry, but another part needed them to see it, to understand I hadn't been absent. By evening, Mom's post was gone, along with a couple of follow-ups from aunts trying to defend it. My phone buzzed with texts from relatives, my aunt saying, "Sophia, I had no idea you'd done all that. You're always so quiet about helping." My cousin added, "That's a lot. If I were you, I'd be done with them." It felt validating but bittersweet, like confirmation that I'd been invisible even to the extended family. From my parents and Oliver? Nothing at first. Then, a single message from Oliver. "We need to talk." A week later, he showed up at my apartment unannounced. I heard the knock while I was cooking dinner, pasta with sauce from a jar, nothing special, and opened the door to find him standing there, looking rumpled in a t-shirt and jeans, dark circles under his eyes like he hadn't slept well. Oliver's not one to look defeated often. He's got that resilient streak, bouncing back from failed ventures with a new idea. But that night, he seemed worn, maybe from dealing with our parents' stress or his own guilt creeping in. "They're falling apart," he said as I let him in, his voice low. The living room felt small with him there, him sinking into the couch while I stayed by the kitchen counter. "The car's about to get repossessed. The bank called this morning." I crossed my arms, feeling a pang of worry for them, but holding firm. "Sounds like something you all need to handle." He glared a bit, but it wasn't full anger, more like frustration mixed with understanding. "Dad didn't mean it like that, Sophia. He was just caught up, praising me because I've been around more, helping with the yard and stuff. He feels bad now, but he's too stubborn to say it." Oliver wasn't defending out of selfishness alone. I think he saw Dad's favoritism as a crutch for his own unsteady life, a way to feel valued when jobs didn't stick, but it didn't excuse the pattern. "He meant it enough to say it in front of 45 people, I replied, my voice steadier than I felt. Inside, I was torn, wanting to fix it like always, but knowing that would just restart the cycle. Oliver sighed, running a hand through his hair. "They're our parents, Sophia. You can't just cut them off." There was pleading in his tone, but also a hint of resentment, like he resented having to step up now that I wasn't. We talked in circles for a bit. He admitted the photo book was his way of showing appreciation, not excluding me, but he hadn't thought about how it looked. I told him about the years of quiet support, how it felt to be the safety net no one acknowledged. He nodded, seeming to get it, but then asked if I'd at least help with the car. "No," I said. "You're their glue. Stick to it." He left without much more, the door clicking shut behind him, leaving me with a hollow feeling, like I'd won a point but lost something bigger. 2 months passed, and I heard bits through cousins. They sold the Subaru for $15,000, a fair price for a 6-year-old model with some miles, using the cash to pay off the remaining loan and buy a cheaper used sedan. Oliver picked up a second job, managing shifts at a brewery downtown alongside his bartending, the kind of place in Asheville with outdoor seating and live music on weekends. It suited him, but I imagined it wore him down, juggling hours while living at home. Mom and Dad downsized, moving from the ranch house to a smaller rental apartment in West Asheville, a 2-bedroom with thin walls and flickering hallway lights, about $1,200 a month, which was affordable, but a step down from owning. The house sale covered their debts, but it meant letting go of the place full of memories, the backyard where we'd played as kids. One evening, they all showed up at my door. Mom, Dad, and Oliver, standing on the stoop like they weren't sure they'd be welcome. Mom looked tired, her cardigan pulled tight, eyes red like she'd been crying. Dad hung back, arms crossed, his face lined more than I remembered. Oliver stood between them, shoulders slumped. I opened the door but didn't invite them in. We talked on the porch, the city sounds of Charlotte filtering up from the street below. "We're sorry," Mom started, her voice small. "What Dad said, it was wrong. We didn't think." She wasn't just apologizing. I could see the regret, mixed with fear of losing the stability I'd provided. Dad nodded, muttering, "I got carried away," favoring Oliver because he's been underfoot, needing the boost. "Didn't mean to erase what you've done." His words were gruff, but sincere, I think, stemming from his own struggles with the business slowing as he aged, leaning on Oliver for company and me for money without balancing it. Oliver chimed in, "I liked the attention, that's on me, but we didn't realize how much you were carrying." It was the closest to vulnerability I'd seen from him, admitting his part without fully excusing it. I listened, feeling the old pull to forgive, to step back in, but also a firmness I'd earned. "You chose publicly," I said. "Now you live with it privately." They didn't push hard, no dramatic pleas, just stood there, realizing the cost. Mom swallowed hard. Dad looked away. Oliver stared at his shoes. After a silence, they left, the weight of it hanging in the air. I wasn't proud, not in a triumphant way. There was sadness, wondering if bridges could mend later, but also peace in setting boundaries. The guilt came in waves, but so did the relief, like breathing easier without the constant drain. Months later, I heard through a cousin that Oliver had moved out, taking a room in a shared house closer to his brewery job. He lasted longer than I'd expected, pitching in with bills and errands. But the daily grind caught up to him. The late nights, the constant worry over payments. Mom and Dad sold the ranch house, the one I'd helped keep from foreclosure with those car payments and repairs. They got a decent price in Asheville's market, enough to clear what they owed, and rented a modest apartment in West Asheville. 2 bedrooms with thin walls that let in neighbors' conversations, and hallway lights that flickered when the wiring acted up. It's not bad, just simpler, a reminder of living within means. I didn't go back, not out of lingering anger, but because I was done carrying the unseen load. Some days, I miss the easy parts, the mountain air, Mom's fruit salad. But mostly, I feel lighter. Like I've set down a backpack I'd forgotten was there. In Charlotte, I focus on my own routines. Work at the firm, walks in the neighborhood parks, maybe a weekend hike alone. Was it too much or not enough? I wonder sometimes, the question pulling at me in quiet moments. But I know one thing. Family isn't forever if it's one-sided. I'm building my life now, one steady step at a time.